In the Hero Academia universe, heroes began to appear among ordinary people after the birth of a luminous child. Over time, about 80% of the population began to have an unusual ability called a quirk. In children, it manifests itself at the age of 4 years. But our protagonist Izuku Midoriya, or Deku, was born an ordinary boy with no ability, which is why he was constantly bullied in kindergarten and at school. But he loved heroes very much, and constantly asked his mother to play him a video about the almighty Hero Number 1. The owners of a quirk use their powers to protect the population from villains or natural disasters. People who choose heroism as a profession are called professional heroes. There is a whole ranking of heroes based on popularity, effectiveness, and contributions to the hero society. But to become a professional hero, you need to get into the Hero Academy. The Yui Academy is considered the most prestigious, and the main character Midoriya and his classmate Bakugo dream of getting into it. Bakugo, or Kachin, has a very powerful quirk. The sweat on his palms is like nitroglycerin, and he can use it to create explosions. Deku has always admired Bakugo's determination and quirkiness, but due to the fact that Kachin has some kind of complexes, he constantly pours out all his aggression on Midoriya and humiliates him in every possible way. Deku is cowardly and completely indecisive, but one day of humiliation from Bakugo, he finally got it, and he turned around to attack him, but abruptly changed his mind. Midoriya was attacked by a monster. The monster almost made Midoriya lose consciousness, but All Might came to his aid, who destroys the monster with one blow and puts it in a bottle to take it to the police. Seeing his idol, Deku was about to ask a couple of questions, but All Might was in a hurry somewhere and flew away from him. However, Midoriya got caught on his leg, causing All Might to stop somewhere on the roof. Deku then asked if he could become a professional hero without a quirk, but he didn't have time to hear the answer because All Might went out of steam and turned into a frail boy. It turns out that 5 years ago, he was seriously injured, because of which his stomach and half of his lungs were removed. Constant operations exhausted him, and now he can turn into his heroic form for only 3 hours a day. But at the same time, no one should know about his secret, because the almighty symbol of the world, to which all heroes are equal. While they were flying to that rooftop, All Might dropped the monster's bottle, causing it to escape and take Bakugo's hostages, taking his quirk for himself. The monster was about to turn Kachin, but he resisted with all his might, although the professional heroes still could not help him, because they were afraid to attack the monster due to the likelihood of Bakugo being destroyed. No one was going to save the student. Even the Almighty stood and looked at it from the side, and only Midoriya had the courage to attack the monster with his powerful briefcase, which contained incredibly dangerous notebooks and pencils. But for unknown reasons, it did not destroy the monster. Seeing Deku's determination, All Might turns into his heroic form with the last of his strength and destroys the monster. On the way home, All Might catches up to Deku and reveals that he has an incredibly powerful quirk called One for All, and one of its features is that it can be transferred to other people. All this time, All Might was looking for a worthy successor to whom he could entrust such a powerful quirk. Seeing how Deku ran to save his classmate, realizing that he had very little chance of defeating the monster, All Might realized that it was Deku who should pass on his abilities. But the problem is that an ordinary body cannot withstand such power. It will simply break into pieces. Therefore, they will begin their 10-month training to prepare Midoriya to pass on his quirk and enter the Hero Academy. In order to get All Might's abilities, Deku had to eat his hair, after which he immediately ran to the selection in the Hero Academy, not understanding what power he received and how to use it. The practical part of the Yui Academy selection consists of a 10-minute battle. In the built city polygon, the guys will have to fight with robots of different levels. There are 3 of them in total. For the destruction of the robot, points are awarded, and their number depends on the strength of the enemy. There is also another type of robot, but for which points are not awarded. Students were advised to simply run away from him. During the test, Midoriya just ran around the training ground, trying to find at least someone, but almost all the robots had already been dismantled. A bunch of students got high scores while Deku ran with 0. Time was running out, and at some point everyone saw a huge robot, for which they do not give points. Everyone started to run away from him, but Midoriya noticed how the girl was squeezed in the rubble, because of which she could not escape there. He was the only one who decided to help her. Deku jumped towards the robot with incredible speed and destroyed it with just one blow. Last year, there were people who also destroyed this robot, but no one was able to do it with one blow. It turned out that 10 months is not enough to fully prepare your body for such loads. Jumping up to the robot, Deku injured both of his legs, and also hitting him, injured his arm. He began to fall to the ground, but he was protected from the blow by the girl he saved, whose name is Ochako Uraraka. Her quirk is the ability to make any object weightless. This ability helped Deku not fall onto the asphalt. Everyone admired his act, especially Tenya Ida, a nerd who has engines in his legs, allowing him to run very fast. The test is over. Deku scored 0 points, which meant he failed. Further written test, which he passed with excellent marks. But due to the fact that he scored 0 points for the practical part, the likelihood that he would be accepted was extremely small. But it turned out that the judges who judged the students gave extra points for saving a person during the test, thanks to which Deku scored enough points to enter the hero faculty. Midoriya entered the class with Bakugo, Idai, and Uraraka. They got here because they successfully passed the qualifying tests. But it turns out that this is not the only way to enter the academy. If you are strong enough or smart enough, then you can be taken on a recommendation. This is exactly what Momo Yoirozu did here, having a creation quirk that allows her to create all kinds of items like weapons. Also on the recommendation, Shoto Todoroki got here. His ability is to control 2 elements. The right hand can create ice, and the left one generates heat. Thanks to this combination, Shoto is one of the strongest students in the academy. They entered Class 1A, whose homeroom teacher will be Shota Aizawa, or Subtrigalova. His quirk allows him to erase any other quirk just by looking at any part of his target's body. But for this, he must constantly keep his eyes open. If he blinks or looks away from the target, the erase effect will instantly disappear. As a test of his students, he organized 8 tests for them. Points are awarded for each of them, depending on the place that the student took. The one who, according to the sum of points of all tests, will be in last place will be expelled from the academy. Since Midoriya hasn't yet mastered his quirk because he takes damage from using it, the likelihood of him being expelled skyrockets. As expected, in the first 5 tests, he was the last one, and in order to score at least some points, he must apply his quirk to throwing the ball. But the problem is that Aizawa's gaze erases his ability during the throw, due to the fact that it will hurt Deku's arm. And if a student cannot throw a ball without hurting his hand, then he is not worthy to study at the academy. So Midoriya had to cheat and throw the ball with his finger. So Trigalova praised him for his creativity and accepted the result. It turned out that despite the high scores in the 5th test, Midoriya still ended up last in terms of points. But it turns out that Aizawa lied about deductions in order for the students to give their best. All Might decided to become a teacher in order to oversee the progress of his heir Deku. He also organized trials, but this time to train teamwork. Before entering the academy, all students had to draw a costume that they would like to have in the future, and a company that cooperates with the school will be involved in their creation. These costumes will help students to control their abilities and to reveal them to the maximum. But since Deku didn't have any quirk yet at the time of filing, he simply drew a costume resembling All Might, and his mother sewed this costume for him. The essence of the test is that all students are randomly divided into teams of 2 people. Then 2 teams are selected to fight against each other. Some will be villains and others will be heroes. According to the scenario, the villains hid the bomb somewhere in their lair, and the heroes are required to figure out its location and either neutralize all the villains or steal a nuclear bomb in the allotted time. The villains, in turn, must protect the bomb or defuse the heroes. Deku got into the team to Uraraka, and they will fight against Ida and Bakugo. Team Deku got the role of heroes. During the battle, Bakugo made the most of his suit, which allows him to build up a code and then create a massive explosion like a small warhead. But due to the fact that they fought in a room where such powerful explosions are useless, Deku was able to dodge Bakugo's attacks. Since there was little time left before the end of the test, Midoriya decided to expose himself to Bakugo's attack, and with his blow, create a huge hole and shake the building so that Uraraka could use his weightlessness quirks and grab the bomb, while bypassing Ida, who, with the help of his engines and legs, would not let her do it. Deku's team won, but he himself ended up in a hospital with serious injuries, where he was treated by the academy nurse, who has the ability to heal, allowing her to speed up the regeneration of any person with her kiss. After the test, Deku was respected by many people, and even chose him as an old age. But he decided that it would be better to be the head of the class Oida, since he is very responsible for everything, because he wants to become the same professional hero as his older brother Ingenium. The students were going to have a lesson on saving people during natural disasters. For this, a separate training ground was created, to which students traveled by bus. 3 teachers had to control everything: Eraserhead, Almighty, and the 13th. This is also a professional hero. His quirk allows him to create the effect of sucking a black hole at the tip of any of his fingers. The suction is so powerful that not even light can escape it. When everyone arrived at the training ground, it turned out that All Might would miss this lesson due to the fact that on the way to the academy, he was heroic in his perfect form. And since he had limited time for this, he simply ran out of steam, so he was forced to restore his strength at the academy. In addition, after he passed on his one-for-all quirk to Deku, his strength waned, and the amount of time he could spend in his hero form decreased. But even without the Almighty, the lesson must take place, and for this, the students were instructed. But just as they were about to begin their practice, a portal appeared out of nowhere and monsters began to emerge from it, led by Tomura Shigaraki, who wanted All Might to know pain. Their organization is called the League of Villains, and the goal is to destroy the Almighty. That is, the symbol of the world. But since he did not come to class, they decided to call him. To do this, you need to start destroying students, and then he will come to their aid. Eraserhead began to fight the monsters alone, and the 13th was to ensure the evacuation of the students. But they were prevented from doing this by Kurojiri, who was able to create a fog that works like a teleport, from which all these monsters just crawled out. Since dealing with all the students at once is quite a difficult task, Kurojiri teleports the students to different places where monsters are already waiting for them, but which the students were able to handle. Shigaraki was aware of Eraserhead's abilities, his weakness being that his eyes must remain open at all times. You can tell by his hair if he's using his quirk. When Eraserhead erases an ability, his hair will rise up. Using this knowledge, Shigaraki severely injured Eraserhead, injuring his elbow. Then Nomu started attacking him. Nomu is a genetically engineered monster that can be controlled by its owners. Since their goal is to destroy All Might, they developed a plan, because it was not for nothing that they decided to attack him during the students' studies. Their trump card is Nomu, who has several quirks, one of which is absorption. Thanks to her, he can absorb the blows of Deku and All Might. Also, someone told them that the All Might has become much weaker than before, but we still don't know who it is. 13th, who fought Kurojiri, was also seriously injured, so it was decided to send Ida to the academy to retrieve the heroes. With the help of teamwork, they managed to pass Kurojiri and sent the headman for help. This news greatly alarmed Shigaraki due to the fact that they did not plan to fight with professional heroes, so they decided to run away. But before that, they wanted to destroy a couple of students. Shigaraki attacked one of the students and almost destroyed her, but with her last breath, she was saved by the Eraserhead. However, they began to attack him with even greater force. Seizing the moment, Deku decided to attack Shigaraki, but his body hit absorbed Nomu, causing Deku not to hurt his arm after the hit like he did before. They realized that Midoriya was a follower of All Might, so the decision was made to destroy him. But at the last moment, an enraged Almighty burst into the training ground, who learned about the attack thanks to Ida. He began to destroy all the monsters at an incredible speed, after which he saved Aizawa and Deku's company along the way, throwing a hand from Shigaraku's face, which turns out to be his father. He asked the children to take the wounded Aizawa away, while he himself began to attack Nomu. But his blows did not cause any damage, and then he tried to immobilize him by throwing him into the asphalt. However, at the moment of impact, Kurojiri created a portal, and half of the Nomu was under the all-powerful. Nomu then began to squeeze All Might's old wound. He tried to get out, but Nomu's grip was stronger. Kurojiri decided to put All Might halfway into the portal so that he could close it later, leaving half of All Might behind. Deku realized that the villains knew about all the weaknesses of the peace symbol, so he rushed to help him. True, Kurojiri foresaw this and created a portal in front of Deku, but at the last moment he was saved by Bakugo. Meanwhile, Shoto helped an injured All Might escape by freezing and destroying half of Nomu's body. But it turned out that another quirk of Nomu is increased regeneration, thanks to which he quickly restored all parts of his body. After that, he attacked the children, but the All Might took the blow. Shigaraki realized that students were another weakness of his, but despite being injured and having very little energy, All Might mustered the last of his strength and began a fierce fist fight to find Nomu's limit. He puts more than 100% of his strength into each punch, and after All Might landed several hundred hits, he still manages to defeat Nomu, which made everyone motivated. This greatly surprised Shigaraki because Nomu was specifically designed for All Might. They were going to leave because help was coming in the form of professional heroes. In addition, All Might began to intimidate the villains. But it was a bluff that only Deku knew about because All Might started to steam, which meant that he would soon turn into a squishy. But at the same time, he intimidates Shigaraki with the last of his strength so that they leave. However, Kurachiri decides that he needs to see things through to the end. Then they attack All Might. He flew to save Deku, though they saw through him and were going to destroy him. But at the last moment, professional heroes appear, who quickly destroy all the monsters and greatly injure Shigaraki, which is why the villain had to flee. Turning into a pimple, All Might began to thank Deku for winning a few seconds. If it wasn't for Midoriya, he would have been destroyed for sure. Deku's classmate ran up to him to check if he was okay, but to prevent him from learning about All Might's secret, Cementos created a clay barrier, after which Deku and All Might were taken to the hospital. It turned out that Shigaraki has a mentor who orchestrated the attack on All Might. This master was very surprised when he learned that Nomu was defeated and then arrested. He said that they would prepare for a new, more powerful attack. All Might tells Deku that due to this battle, the time he can lead in hero form has been severely reduced. He hopes he has at least an hour. Detective Naomasa Tsukachi, one of the few who knows about All Might's true form, comes into their room, and all because they are best friends. The detective says that not a single student was injured, so Trigolova and the 13th are badly injured and are in the hospital, but nothing threatens their health. They come to the conclusion that these freshmen are among the strongest of all time, so they will make great heroes. Discharged from the hospital, Deku reunites with his friends and heads home. The Villain League's attack on the Academy was just the start of a huge incident later on. The day after the League of Villains attacked the Academy, the news reported that 72 villains had been captured in the attack. All Might's mentor, nicknamed Gran Torino, received a letter from All Might. In it, he told about Deku, who tried to save a man with his bare hands, and it is also possible that the Almighty will send his student to his mentor for training. Detective Naomasa Tsukachi is sitting at a teacher's meeting discussing the escaped villains Shigaraki and Kurojiri. All Might assumed that this was just a demonstration of the power of the League of Villains, and the headmaster thinks that there is someone who controls everything. The next day, the school starts the morning meeting, where Aizawa shows up bandaged. He announces that the Yui Sports Festival is coming soon, and therefore all the strongest heroes will be watching this event. And this is a great opportunity for students to join one of the hero agencies. At lunch, Deku, Ida, and Uraraka share their goals, as well as why they want to be heroes. Uraraka wants to become a hero for money, as her family is currently in financial trouble. Ida wants to become the same hero as his older brother Ingenium, and Deku just wants to be a hero. Just then, All Might appears and offers Deku a meal with him until Ida and Uraraka realize All Might's attraction to Deku. Meanwhile, Deku tells All Might about the time he hit Nomu with his power and didn't hurt his arm. All Might praised Deku, and then encouraged him to show all his strength at the festival, as they need to show the whole world the new All Might, Izuku Midoriya. A crowd of students have gathered around Class 1A since this class has become popular due to the battle in the park, and therefore everyone is trying to find out more information about the students in this class and about their quirks. The day of the festival arrives. While the students are waiting for the festival to begin, Todoroki suddenly tells Deku that although he has attracted All Might's attention, he won't be able to win. However, Deku is not going to give up and will put everything he has on the line. Present Mike announces the beginning of the festival and invites the participants of the first year to the stage. Hero Midnight invites Bakugo to the stage as the best of those who have arrived. He needs to make a speech. Bakugo swears that he will be number one. Midnight announces the first stage, steeplechase, and talks about the rules, which in fact do not exist, since absolutely everything is allowed to the participants. After the start, everyone starts to crush each other, and after Todoroki freezes everyone and pulls ahead, but many unfreeze and try to catch up with him. The robots that were in the initial exam appear on the way. Todoroki temporarily freezes one of them so that he falls and blocks the path for everyone else. Bakugo and the other heroes use their quirks to simply fly over the robots. Meanwhile, Deku grabs a piece of iron and uses it as a shield and, along with Yaoyorozu, destroy several robots. The rest of the participants also pass on in different ways. The second obstacle on the way was the canyon, through which everyone needs to get over. Asu and other members with unique quirks pass easily. Again, Todoroki turns out to be the first. Bakugo immediately runs after him, and Deku at this time, together with his shield, climbs over the canyon. The third obstacle was the minefield, where the mines are not lethal, but can disable the participant for a while. Meanwhile, Bakugo catches up to Todoroki, and they start fighting on the run. Deku saw Bakugo flying over the mines and had the idea to collect many mines into the pit and use the blast wave and his shield to push towards the finish line. In the end, Deku overtakes everyone, but Bakugo and Todoroki run right behind him. Deku slams his shield on the ground, and another wave sends him forward again. Ultimately, Deku gets to the finish line first. The first stage is over. The first place was taken by Deku, the second by Todoroki, the third by Bakugo. As a result, 42 participants passed to the next stage. Next, Midnight announces the start of the second stage called the Battle of the Chariot. The essence is simple. Everyone needs to unite in teams of 2 to 4 participants. Someone will be a horse, and someone will be a rider. Each rider will have a band on his head with the total number of points of his team that they have earned at the end of the first stage, and the task of other teams is to get these bands. Whoever has the most points will take first place. As a result of the first stage, Deku received 10 million points, and whoever takes possession of the armband of the Deku team, that team will win. Everyone is given 15 minutes to create a team. Everyone immediately surrounded Bakugo and asked him to join their team, but Bakugo decides to join Kirishima. On the contrary, everyone runs away from Deku because of his glasses. However, Uraraka joins him, along with Mai Hatsume and Tokoyami along with his shadow. Todoroki took Ida, Yaoyorozu, and Kaminari to his team. Bakugo teamed up with Kirishima, Ashido, and Shoro, thus formed 12 teams. The start is called, and everyone immediately aims for Deku's chariot. However, with the help of Mii's device and Uraraki's weightlessness, he takes off and flies far away, while Tokoyami protects everyone with his shadow. Deku is attacked by 2 teams, but they fly away again, but this time they are attacked in flight by Bakugo. Everyone is again protected by Tokoyami, while Bakugo is pulled back by Sarah. It turned out that Deku's plan was to simply dodge all attacks. According to the preliminary results, everyone from Class A, except for Deku, already has 0 points, since all other classes began to take points from students of Class A. Then Bakugo decides to change the plan and knock out points from other classes first, and then deal with Deku points. Bakugo loses his temper and attacks Monoma. However, Monomu easily dodges. It turns out Monomu is able to copy any other people's quirks after coming into contact with them. Then Bakugo attacks again and pulls out 2 bandages at once, and they immediately fall into the top 3. But Bakugo wants to be the first, and therefore decides to take absolutely all the armband from the Monomu team. Meanwhile, Todoroki catches up with Deku. His goal is to get 10 million points, but he is not the only one so smart. Everyone is hunting for Deku in parallel. Todoroki's team uses Kaminari's electricity to electrocute everyone and then freeze them to the ground. Todoroki's team attacks Deku's chariot again, but Deku sticks to his left side and dodges. However, Ida steps in and turns on the turbojet boost, and at breakneck speed, their chariot flies towards Deku, and Todoroki snatches the headband with 10 million. Team Deku decides to get their points back. Then Deku uses his power and air pressure pushes Todoroki's arm back and grabs the top ribbon from his neck. However, he was outmaneuvered and grabbed the 70-point tape. With only a few seconds left, Deku and Bakugo simultaneously fly towards Todoroki's chariot for the bandage. Tokoyami manages to reach Todoroki, but he deflects the blow and time runs out. According to the results of the second stage, the first place was taken by the Todoroki team. The second place was taken by the Bakuji team. The third place was taken by the Shinso Hitoshi team. And the fourth place was taken by the Deku team. Because at the last moment, Tokoyami managed to pull out another large bandage with the help of his shadow. During lunch, Todoroki called Deku to talk, where he said that Deku's power and All Might's power are very similar. So Todoroki assumed that Deku was All Might's illegitimate son. Deku naturally denied everything, but Todoroki still understands that Deku and All might have some kind of hidden connection. Then Todoroki begins to pour out his soul and talk about his difficult childhood. It turns out he never used his left side of fire, as he has a very bad relationship with his father. As Todoroki begins to leave, Deku tells him that his goal is to become as strong as All Might, so he will definitely win the festival. At the same time, All Might met Endeavor, Todoroki's father and second in ranking after him. All Might wondered how he trained his son like that, but Prospector did not want to talk to his sworn rival. Announced the start of the final fights, where 16 participants participate. They will fight in a one-on-one format, and the opponents will be determined by lot. The two members refuse to participate, as they consider Shinso's participation dishonest, as he can control the other's mind. Midnight accepts their refusal, and now the places of the eliminated will be taken by the members of the Tetsu team. Rivals are defined, then Cementos creates an arena. The first fight will be Deku vs Shinso. According to the rules of the final, in order to win, you need to throw the opponent out of the arena or knock him out. The referee will be Cementos. The fight started, and Shinso immediately starts insulting him, causing Deku to get angry and respond to him. But Shinso was waiting for this to take control of Deku's body. He then orders Deku out of the arena. Everyone is shocked and does not understand what is happening. A conscious Deku tries to stop his body, but he fails to do so. Then he remembered the words of Ojiro, where he said that he was pulled out of hypnosis by a blow. Suddenly, in the darkness, Deku sees faces with burning eyes, and he manages to move his fingers. He uses force and is released from control. Deku didn't understand what had happened, but he didn't move his fingers. Shinso tries to hurt Deku in order to take control of him again. However, Deku attacks Shinso and slams him into the ground. Deku wins. Granny heals Deku's fingers, and Deku tells All Might that he saw faces with glowing eyes, and that helped him break Shinso's control. Deku thinks they are the souls of those who may have had the power of One for All. All Might has never experienced this, but thinks it may have come from self-control. Meanwhile, Todoroki met his father by chance. The prospector again began to insist that his son use his fiery side. But Todoroki called his father a scumbag, and he will only use his mother's strength to win. The second fight between Todoroki and Sarah begins. Sarah grabs Todoroki with his ribbons. However, out of anger after talking with his father, Todoroki uses a powerful technique and freezes Sura, and with it the floor of the stadium. The next fight will be between B-classed Shiozaki and Kaminari. Kaminari starts attacking with a bolt of lightning, but Shiozaki grabs him with his greens, thus winning. Then the fourth fight between Ida and Mei begins, where Ida chases Mei for a long time, who arranged a duel in a show presentation of her gadgets. She then walked out of the arena herself, and in the end, Ida won. Fifth duel between Aoyama and Ashido. Aoyama launches a laser attack, but Ashido dodges and throws acid at him, then knocks him out with one punch. Sixth fight between Takoyami and Yoyorozu. Takoyami easily pushes Yoyorozu out of the arena and wins. The seventh fight will be between Tetsu Steel and Kirishima. These are two powerful fighters with similar quirks. They both attack each other and fall at the same time. Ultimately, a draw is declared, but when they come to their senses, the winner will be determined. In the eighth battle, Uraraka and Bakugo will meet. Bakugo offers her to surrender before the fight starts, but Uraraka is serious. Bakugo starts attacking Uraraka non-stop. She dodges and in parallel collects fragments above the arena. After accumulating the shards, she throws them at Bakugo, but Bakugo destroys her entire plan with one blow. Uraraka's powers reached their limit, so Bakugo won. Deku accidentally runs into Endeavor in the hallway, who praises Deku for his excellent fight, adding that he can even defeat All Might. Deku was about to leave, but the prospector said that he was waiting for the moment when his son would surpass the all-powerful. But for now, Deku needed to try to show a worthy fight against his strongest son. All participants have regained strength, which means that Deku and Todoroki will fight in the quarterfinals. After the announcement of the start, Todoroki immediately attacks with ice, but Deku destroys his block with his finger, which causes serious damage to several fingers. Deku thus tries to understand Todoroki's weaknesses. Deku notices that Todoroki is shaking from the cold, which means he should use the fire side. This angers Todoroki, and he attacks Deku, but Deku knocks him back with his broken arm. Deku encourages Todoroki to use his fire side as he doesn't use his power to 100% due to his grudge. Todoroki remembered an incident from the past when his mother poured boiling water on him, for which his father sent her to a psychiatric hospital. Then he realized that Deku had been trying to help him all this time. Todoroki attacks Deku, but Deku jumps towards him. The judges try to stop this fight, but Deku destroys the arena by force, which is why he flew out of the arena and Todoroki won. After the fight, Todoroki is approached by his father and invites him to his agency, but Todoroki has not yet forgiven his father, so he refused. Ida's fight against Shiozaki begins, where Ida simply pushes his opponent out of the arena and wins. Meanwhile, Grandma performed the operation and partially restored Deku's bones. However, due to numerous injuries, he was left with a scar on his right arm. Grandma tells Deku that he needs to change his way of training. Then Deku suggests to All Might that he choose another successor for himself. But All Might believes in Deku, so he tries to motivate him. Ingenium on a mission met Chizome Akaguro, who destroys the heroes, and he also smashes Ingenium to pieces. Bakugo and Kirishima's next fight. Bakugo realized that Kirishima's weakness was the long use of his quirk, causing Bakugo to enter the semi-finals. In the semi-finals, Todoroki and Ida meet, where Ida turns on full power and tries to push Todoroki out in 10 seconds. But he fails and Todoroki goes to the final. Second semi-final fight between Bakugo and Tokoyami. Bakugo uses a flash grenade and defeats Tokoyami. The final fight will be between Bakugo and Todoroki. Todoroki attacks first and freezes Bakugo and half of the arena. However, Bakugo managed to get out and starts a counterattack. He throws Todoroki out of the arena, but Todoroki manages to stop himself with ice. Bakugo calls on Todoroki to use his fire side and then attacks with a powerful blow, thereby destroying the floor of the arena and knocking Todoroki back a couple of tens of meters. Bakugo grabs Todoroki and insults him for not using his full power. Midnight comforts Bakugo. In the end, Bakugo was the winner. The award ceremony begins, where Bakugo won first place. However, he was tied up so that he would not blow up the arena. Second place went to Todoroki, and third place went to Tokoyami and Ida. The All Might appears and distributes rewards to the winners. In class, Aizawa announces a special class hour where all students have to choose hero names. But before that, it shows the number of hero agency invitations sent to the students. Todoroki received over 4,000 invitations and Deku 0, as not everyone is ready to work with Bakugo's exuberant nature. Everyone chose a name for themselves. Then Aizawa talks about the future internship. He distributed forms to everyone and gave the students 2 days to choose. Meanwhile, Cementos is processing the incoming invitations for students along with the Almighty. They found one invitation for Deku. All Might was surprised that he was invited to the Gran Torino Academy. After All Might comes to Deku and tells him about the invitation from his former teacher of the Gran Torino school, who worked at the school for about a year, and he was All Might's homeroom teacher. He knows about the power of one for all, and therefore chose Deku. The news was about the attack on Ida's brother. It was a mat that destroys heroes. He had already destroyed 17 heroes and maimed 23, so Ida chose for himself an internship at the Hosu Agency, where his brother worked. Aizawa distributes hero costumes to everyone and sends them for internships. Deku arrives at the Gran Torino Agency, where he finds the teacher lying on the floor in a red puddle. It turned out that he just dropped a sausage with ketchup and fell into it. Gran Torino started jumping around the room very quickly, telling Deku to show his strength. Deku puts on his new, upgraded suit. The old man then asks Deku to attack him with one for all power. The old man begins to quickly attack Deku, who tries to figure out the old man's movements. But Gran Torino grabs him by the face and drops him to the ground, and then he leaves for food, while forcing Deku to clean everything up. Meanwhile, Stain was found by Kurogiri and Shigaraki, who invited him to join the League of Villains and deal with the heroes and their students. However, Stain rudely refused. He immobilized the villains with his quirk and asked to be taken back to the Hosu area. After the teleportation, Stain goes hunting, and Shigaraki and Kurogiri realize that he only destroys unworthy heroes, so they are not on the way with him. Then they teleport 3 Nomu to destroy the city. Meanwhile, the heroes began training at various academies. The next day, Deku was assisted in his training by a microwave oven, which gave him an epiphany called One for All Full Power Coverage. Torino offers to practice right away. The Deku has 3 minutes to hit the old man. In the end, Deku took all the blows, but the old man praised him for making so much progress in just 1 day. Shukachi comes to All Might's school and tells that Nomu is connected with the instigator, and they also identified Nomu's identity. This is a former criminal. Based on the examination, the genes of 4 people are mixed in Nomu, and he has 4 quirks at once. Shukachi suggested that there is someone who can also transfer his power. Meanwhile, Deku is sent to fight evil. They will also pass near Hosu, where Ida and the hero Manuel are patrolling. The hero realizes that Ida wants to avenge his brother, so he decides to warn him and remind him of the law, which states that heroes cannot use their quirks for personal revenge. Ida pretended to understand, but he was still going to implement what he had planned. Meanwhile, Deku and an old man pass by Hosu, where their train is suddenly attacked by Nomu. Gran Torino grabs Noma and flies with him away from the train full of people. Deku follows them. Ida and Manuel also saw the explosions, so they moved to the spot. However, on the way, Ida turned into an alley where he found Stain. Ida immediately decided to avenge his brother, but Stain, learning this, decides to destroy Ida. Stain easily lays Ida on the floor and immobilizes him, and is about to finish off Ida. Parallel to this, Deku encounters 2 more Nomu who are fighting a bunch of heroes. However, when he heard that the manual was looking for Ida, Deku realized that Ida had gone for revenge, so he went after him. In the alley, he found Ida and Stain. Then he turns on the full cover and throws the villain away from Ida. Stain asks Deku to leave or he will destroy them both. Deku, on the other hand, skillfully sends SMS to all nearby heroes about his location, and then attacks him with a powerful blow. However, the villain manages to injure Deku and paralyzes him. Todoroki suddenly appears and fires Stain away. They start to fight. The villain hurt his face and tried to paralyze him, but Todoroki defended himself with fire. However, after the battle, he received damage to his arm. Stain attacks again, but Deku appears and knocks the villain back. It turned out that due to Deku's first blood type, the villain's paralysis had almost no effect on him, which is why he was able to move. Deku and Todoroki take turns attacking Stain, but Deku gets paralyzed again. Afterwards, Stain aims at Todoroki and almost catches him, but Ida saves Todoroki from being hit with a reverse boost. By teamwork, they knock out Stain. Meanwhile, the prospector fights against the Nomu, with whom Gran Torino fought, but it turns out that the old man himself is not amiss. He divides the Nomu and drops it to the ground. Gran Torino is sent to the coordinates in the alley, and the prospector himself joins the battle against the remaining 2 Nomu. The prospector asks everyone to go to the lane where the guys have already tied up the villain. They are greeted by Gran Torino, who is glad that Deku is okay. Ida apologizes for this incident. A flying Nomu suddenly appears and grabs Deku. At this moment, the villain is released and destroys Nomu, saying that he did this for the benefit of the future high society. However, after that, he is going to destroy everyone, but because of his broken ribs, he simply passes out. Gran Torino, the manual, and the head of the police Hosu, Kenji Tsuragame, came to the hospital to the heroes. He thanks the guys for this excellent work done. Gran Torino calls All Might about a captured villain who is sick of the perfect world ideology, and Torino believes that he is connected to a league of villains, and perhaps this will attract a new wave of villains with a similar ideology. He also reports that All for One is back in the game. Gran Torino asks All Might to tell Deku the whole truth about what happened to his quirk and to himself. 2 days later, absolutely everyone knows about the villain who destroys the heroes. They even made a video about him with a full description of his biography. many are starting to join the hero killer movement. A large number of new villains, every day more and more willing to join the League of Villains. A few days later, Ida and Todoroki are released from the hospital. Ida goes home, and Todoroki decides to go to endeavor to find out about the well-being of the hero who allegedly saved everyone from the hero killer. After everything that happened, All Might conducts the basic training of the heroes, where he teaches them the rescue sprint. An entire field has been set aside for this, and the purpose of the sprint is to save All Might, who will be in the center of the field. The one who saves All Might first wins. The first group of 4 starts. From the very beginning, Sarah breaks ahead, but Deku overtakes everyone, and Deku borrowed movements from Bakuga. However, he slipped and Surut became the winner. All Might was surprised by Deku's results and invited him to his office. There, the Almighty told about the story about him and the emergence of the power one for all. Just as the quirks began to appear, a certain man appeared who was called All for One. He manipulated people professionally and wanted to take over all of Japan. His quirk allowed him to take the quirks of others, as well as transfer them to other people. He decided to choose the side of evil and became the leader of all the villains. Quirks he passed on to trusted people, but not all human bodies could withstand the transferred power. When the body could not withstand the power, the person became a weak-willed doll. Thus the Nomu appeared. Also, the villain had a brother who was born without a quirk, but he had a strong spirit of justice. It hurt him to look at his older brother, and he resisted him. His brother gave him a quirk that accumulated power. It turned out that he had a hidden quirk to transfer power to others, and when these 2 quirks mixed, the power of One for All appeared. In order to live forever, All for One found a quirk of immortality for himself, and his younger brother decided to pass on his power to his successors. From that moment on, the path of strength, One for All, began. The younger brother hoped that someday enough power would accumulate to be able to stop his older brother. And it was the Almighty who managed to defeat the villain. However, All for One survived and founded a League of Villains. One day, Deku will have to face a great evil and defeat him. Deku announces that he is ready to save the world. Also, the Almighty wanted to tell about his fatal illness, but he could not do it. There is a week left before the final exam of the U School, where there will be a written and practical exam. Yoirozu volunteered to help everyone prepare for the written exam, so she invited everyone to her house for the weekend. And B-class student Kendo said that the practical exam will again fight against robots. A week passes, the written exam begins, which lasts 3 days. It's time for the practical exam. Principal Nezu reveals that they have changed the exam rules a bit as they want to focus more on one-on-one battles. Therefore, they were paired up according to their quirks, and they would fight against the teachers. All students will have 30 minutes to handcuff the teacher to pass the exam, or run out the exit gate and take the exam. To equalize the strength, each teacher puts weights on their arms and legs, which make up half of their body weight. The first to fight Kirishima and Sato against teacher Cementos. The battle begins. Cementos immediately creates cement walls. Kirishima and Sato show their quirks and go ahead, but Cementos deliberately stalls for time, as he knows the limitation in using their quirk. They ended up failing the exam as they passed out. Asui and Tokoyami's second fight against ectoplasm. The students combine their quirks, but ectoplasm creates up to 30 clones and attacks with them. However, Asui and Tokoyami defend well. Ectoplasm then summons a giant clone that attacks and takes over their bodies. Tokoyami tries to attack with her shadow, and Asui takes out her handcuffs, and through the shadow they handcuff the teacher, thus successfully passing the exam. Ojiro and Ida's third fight against the loader. Ida uses hyper-acceleration to spin Ojiro around and throws him towards the gate, thus allowing them to pass the exams. In the fourth fight, a pair of Todoroki and Yoirozu against Aizawa. Aizawa disables Todoroki's quirk and hangs him up. Yoirozu creates a flash grenade and saves Todoroki. He escapes and leaves a wall of ice behind him, while Yoirozu creates Aizawa ribbons from a nickel and titanium alloy, which causes the alloy to harden when heated. They set up a trap and threw ribbons at Aizawa with a catapult. They tied the teacher with ribbons and handcuffed him. The fifth fight between Aoyama and Yuraraku against the 13th. The students also successfully passed the exam. The fight between Kaminari and Ashido against the director begins. The director uses a crane to destroy the building and cover the students with rubble. The director's quirk is a highly developed intellect despite being an animal. Ashido and Kaminari are running out of time, so they fail the exam. The seventh fight of Jiro and Kuji pair against present Mick. The teacher attacks with sound waves. Then Kuji begins to control the insects, and they envelop Mick, thus giving victory to the couple. Shoji and Toru's next fight is against Strelok. The gunslinger attacks with shots from Shoji, while Toru became invisible and easily handcuffed the teacher. Minoru and Shioru's ninth fight against Midnight with the lunatic quirk, as she can put her to sleep with her body odor. Shioru pushes Minoru away so that he doesn't fall under the spell. However, he falls under it himself and falls asleep. Then Midnight finds Minoru and attacks it with a whip. Minoru starts running to get Midnight away from the gate, and then he throws his sticky balls and sticks her. Then they pass through the gate, and the team successfully passes the exam. The last fight left is Deku and Bakugo versus All Might. First, Deku wants to discuss the plan with Bakugo, but he was against it, and therefore hit him in the face. The Almighty intervened, destroying an entire block with one blow. All Might asks them to pretend that he is now a villain, so Bakugo immediately attacks All Might in the face, but later ends up on the ground. All Might then switches to Deku and throws it at Bakugo. Bakugo angrily says that he will never accept help from Deku's trash, causing Deku to use his power to attack Bakugo and then grab him and run into an alley. There, Bakugo came up with a plan where he distracts All Might from one side with an explosion, while Deku attacks All Might from the other side and runs towards the gate. But things don't go according to plan as All Might breaks Bakugo's gauntlet and then Deku. He throws them at the building, but Bakugo attacks All Might and throws the deck towards the gate. However, All Might catches up to Deku and slams him into the ground. Bakugo then decides to attack with his strongest attack, but is immediately slammed into the ground. Deku uses his power to punch All Might in the face before taking Bakugo and running with him towards the gate. In the end, Deku and Bakugo passed the exam. Meanwhile, villains who want to join the League of Villains have come to Shigaraki's cafe. Shigaraki does not want to receive anyone, so he asks Kurogiri to destroy the guests. However, Kurogiri suggests listening to the speakers first. The first newcomer is Toga, a psychopathic schoolgirl who is already suspected of a number of crimes, and the second is named Dabi, who wants to play the role of a villain in their league. Hearing the third name, Stain, Shigaraki lost his temper and decided to destroy the newcomers. But Kurogiri intervened and redirected the blows, as they needed new villains. At school, Aizawa informs everyone that they are all going to camp together. The kids went to the store first. Shigeki finds Deku near the stalls. He needed to talk to him, so he forces Deku, otherwise he will destroy him with one finger. Shigaraki reveals that he also hates the hero killer, and they are clearly not allies. But Deku does not understand Shigaraki's motives, and even though Steen wants to create a perfect world, Deku condemns him. Shigaraki decided to use Stain's motives to carry out his plan. Meanwhile, Uraraki comes to Deku and finds him with Shigaraki. The villain, seeing Deku's girlfriend, decides to let him go, and warns in advance that if Deku goes after him, he will destroy many innocent people. Shigaraki leaves, but Deku follows up with the question of what everyone needs for one. Shigaraki replies that no one knows, but he knows for sure that next time he will destroy Deku. After Shigaraki dissolves into the crowd, Uraraka then reported the incident to the police, and the mall was temporarily closed. The heroes and the police independently investigated, but Shigaraki was never found. Then Deku was invited to the police station, where he spoke with the investigator Naoma Tsukachi, who is investigating the League of Villains. He thanked Deku for the information, and on the way out they meet All Might as well as Deku's mom. They then drive home under police escort. Tsukachi tells All Might that it was like a chance encounter with a villain, so they continue to watch the League of Villains, but they will also need the help of the Yui School. All Might looks to the investigator and his quick lead to find the League of Villains. The Yui School's swimming pool hosts a training session where students compete in speed with quirks. However, Aizawa appears and announces the end of their competition as pool time has come to an end, as well as the start of summer classes due to the end of the first semester. Now 2 classes 1 and 1-bit are going to summer camp to train their quirks and improve their stamina. The students are taken to the gathering place in front of the camp, where they meet a team of professional wild cat heroes and a powerful male cat. Hero Mandalay shows the camp to which the students must reach. Then Pixabop throws everyone off the cliff into the forest of magical animals. And now the goal of all students is to get to the camp through the forest, which is filled with magical creatures. In this regard, Shoji and Jiro began to hunt down the beasts, and everyone else began to destroy these monsters. As a result, the beaten and tired students successfully reached their destination. They were told the conditions of their stay in the camp, and they were also introduced to Mandala's nephew named Kota, who hates heroes since his parents of heroes were destroyed in the line of duty. Deku decided to get to know him, however. Kota used a very powerful punching technique. In the meantime, all students were placed in the camp. Training starts the next day, so all the students went to recover in a hot spring. There Kota fell off the wall as he saw irresistible women. Deku caught him and took him to the medical center. Mandalay told about the dead parents of Kota, and he is also in the camp, since he has nowhere else to go. The next day, Aizawa gathered everyone and said that today's goal is to increase the strength of each student's quirk. To show the change in power level over the past 3 months, he invited Bakugo and asked him to throw the ball again. The previous record was 705 meters, and now he threw 709 meters. With this, Aizawa showed that Bakugo's quirk power level had not changed much in 3 months, and therefore it is now very important to strengthen quirks and increase stamina. In parallel with this, the League of Villains lay low. However, this is just the calm before the storm, as Shigaraki has gathered strong villains and created a strike force, and now the villains are preparing to implement their audacious plan. Meanwhile, the students begin their long training sessions where each develops their own quirk. Class 1-bit began the same training under the leadership of Vlad and under the supervision of Wildcats. Ragdoll, with the help of his quirk, can observe hundreds of people at once and find their weaknesses. Pixabop can control the earth. Mandalay has telepathy. She can transmit messages from a distance and read people's minds. Tiger is responsible for attacks and destruction, so he took up Deku training. After training, the students cooked their own food. Deku noticed Kota leaving and decided to give him some food. However, Kota refused Deku's help. Meanwhile, the strike force is plotting to attack the camp, but for now they are waiting for the main body to arrive. Students at this time train hard, and in the evening they pass courage tests, and those who did not pass the UE school exam, Aizawa takes with him to class. The essence of the test is that one class scares the other, so everyone is divided into groups of 2 heroes using a random house. However, Deku is left without a mate. Class B will be the first to scare, and Class A will act as victims. At the same time, Aizawa led the students to the classroom where Manamu and teacher Vlad were waiting for them. They all receive a telepathic message from Mandalay that they have been attacked. Aizawa immediately goes to help them. However, on the street, he is attacked by Dabi and attacks point blank with fire. But Aizawa dodges, disables Dobi's quirk, and slams him face first into the ground. However, Dabi dissolves as it turns out it was a copy made by Twice. Aizawa meets some of the students coming out of the forest. He sends students to Vlad's class, and he goes to the forest. Meanwhile, part of the forest was filled with poisonous gas. In different places, the villains simultaneously attacked a group of students and heroes. Spinner and Magna attacked Pixie Bob, Mandalay, and Tigger. Magni immediately knocked out Pixie Bob, and the villains also reported that they were from the strike squad of the League of Villains, and that they now adopted Stein's ideology, which says that every hero should earn the right to be called a hero, and weak heroes should be destroyed. Mandalay and Tiger start fighting against Spinner and Magna. Meanwhile, Deku went to rescue Kota, who was overtaken by Muscle. He nearly destroys the boy, but is saved at the last moment by Deku. When Muscle found out that Deku was in front of him, this is the one whom Shigaraki instructed to destroy in the first place. Muscle immediately attacks and knocks Deku back into the rock. However, Muscle let it slip and said that the target of the strike force was Bakugo. It turned out that Muscle destroyed Kouta's parents, for which Deku decides to attack him with a powerful attack. However, the villain withstands the blow. Then Muscle attacks again, but Deku manages to dodge. Deku has no choice, so he decides to fight Muscle and not back down. As a result, the Muscle pins Deku to the ground, but the villain is distracted by the cat. Seizing the moment, Deku uses his 1,000,000% strength and uses his technique to hit Muscle, slamming him up the mountain and defeating him. Deku takes the boy and heads towards the camp, as he urgently needs to inform the teachers and the cat squad that Bakugo is the target of the villains. On the way, Deku meets Aizawa, who reminds him of his lack of a heroic apprentice license. But since all available forces are now needed, he asked for a message from Mandalay, in which Aizawa issued all students permission to fight. Deku gets to Mandalay and relays Aizawa's message to her, and also tells her that Koda is safe. Mandalay, using her quirk, informed everyone about Aizawa's order, and also asked Deku to pass on the information that the target of the capture of the villains was Bakugo. Deku went looking for Bakugo. However, Magni decided to destroy him, but Spinner stopped him since, according to Stain's ideology, the villain recognized Deku as a worthy hero. Meanwhile, Bakugo and Todoroki encountered Toothie, who immediately attacked them. They started to fight the villain, but they fell into a trap as Bakugo's quirk can create a fire, and they can't escape because of the gas behind them. At the same time, Deku encounters Shoji and Tokoyami, whose shadow went out of control during the battle with the villain. It turned out that they were also attacked by Toothie and hurt Shoji's arm by a replicant. Seeing this, Tokoyami lost control of his quirk, and now Tokoyami asks the guys to leave and leave a shadow on him. However, after seeing Bakugo's explosions in the distance, Deku came up with a plan where they would run towards Bakugo and draw a shadow behind them. There he will create a glow, and the shadow will calm down. In the end, they successfully implemented the plan. However, Bakugo decided to wait until the shadow destroyed Toothie. After that, they, along with Todoroki, calmed the shadow. Deku reminded everyone that Bakugo was the villain's target, so he offered to take Bakugo to the camp. They set off, building a kind of shield in front of Bakugo. Meanwhile, Yaoyorozu created masks for all the students, and Tetsu decided to go help the teachers. But Kendo stopped him and suggested that he find the one who creates the gas. The villain was very close, so they easily found him. A villain named Mustard attacked Tetsu and broke his mask, causing him to lose his powers as he couldn't breathe. However, Kendo enlarged her arms and created whirlwinds of air that dispersed the gas. Then Tetsu attacked the villain with his last strength and knocked him out. Meanwhile, Uraraka and Asui fight against Togu. Toga attacks Uraraka, but Asui defends her, causing her tongue to break. Then Toga chains Asui by the hair to a tree. Uraraka attacks the villain and slams her face into the ground. Tobu says that they both smell the same since they are both in love with someone. She suddenly sticks her syringe into Uraraka's leg and draws blood from her. However, Deku and the rest of the guys show up, and Togu decides to retreat. It turns out that the villainess is also in love with Deku. Deku suggests they all go to camp together and escort Bakugo. However, it turned out that Bakugo and Tokoyami had disappeared, captured by Mr. Compress, who informed the strike team that they had secured the target, and the villains began to retreat. The guys went in pursuit of the Compress. Dabi and Twice also went to the rally point, and they also summoned Noma with them, thereby accidentally saving Yaoyorozu and a vase from trouble. In order not to miss Nomu, Yaoyorozu creates a tracking chip, and Awaze attaches it with his quirk to Nomu. Another clone of Debbie bursts into the class to the students, but Vlad slams him into the wall. The clone says that the entire hero system stands on only two pillars: the hero All Might and the pinnacle of Yui training. However, just a few incidents can destroy this system, and this crack will spread throughout the heroic world. Aizawa suddenly appeared and destroyed the clone. He leaves Koda, and he goes to help the others. At the training field, Tiger and Mandalay nearly defeated Magna and Spinner, but Kurojiri appeared and freed them. Meanwhile, the guys keep chasing Compress. Deku came up with a plan where Uraraka makes everyone weightless and Asui launches them straight towards the villain. They end up slamming Compress into the ground right at the Strike Force's rally point. Several villains have already arrived there, who immediately begin to attack the heroes. Dabi scatters everyone with her fire, and Toga attacks her new love Deku, whom she wanted to destroy. However, Shoji stopped her. Todoroki took over twice, while Shoji was able to take possession of the orbs with Bakugo and Tokoyami. It turned out that they were not real balls. Kurojiri appeared, and the villains began to enter his portal. At the last moment, Aoyama shoots a laser at Compress's mask from the bushes, and he drops the balls. Shoji manages to grab one of the balls, and the second ball grabs Dabi. As a result, Tokoyami was saved, and Bakugo was taken away by the villains. The police and firefighters arrived at the scene, who reported that 3 villains had been captured: Muscle, Mustard Gas, and now a toothless villain. After the incident, Deku was taken to the hospital. The next day, hundreds of journalists arrived at the UE school, while the school was holding a meeting of teachers, where there was a debriefing. The teachers decided to direct all their efforts to protect the students. All Might received a call from Shukachi, saying that they had interrogated Azaba and Vlad, and possibly found Bakugo's location. When Lieutenant Sansa was gathering information, he found out that a scared man was in one of the buildings. They immediately contacted the owner of the house, and it turned out that there is a bar there. Shukachi then asks All Might to join them. The Almighty agrees. Meanwhile, Deku is recovering in the hospital. His classmates came to support him. There, Kirishima offered to go and save Bakugo, as on the way to Deku's chamber, they, along with Todoroki, accidentally heard the words of Yaoyorozu, who, with the help of Avas, attached a tracking chip to Nomu, and thereby tracks his location. They asked Yaoyorozu to make another instrument especially for them. But Ida remembered that he had promised not to get involved in things without permission, so he suggested to just trust All Might and not make any rash moves. This decision was supported by the majority of students. Deku was sent for an examination, where his grandmother cured his hands. However, due to the large number of injuries, the hands did not fully recover. Then the doctor said that if Deku continued to receive such injuries, then his hands would become paralyzed. The doctor also delivered a letter from Kauta, in which he thanked Deku for saving him. Deku received a call from his mother, who asked him to think about leaving U School. However, Deku owes everything to All Might, and since he made him a hero, he cannot let him down. When Deku leaves the hospital with Yaoyorozu, the guys start saving Bakugo. They drive to the Kamina area in Yokohama City. Meanwhile, Shukachi enlisted several heroes in the operation. They started discussing the plan to take over the headquarters of the League of Villains. At this time, the news reported that one of the students of the school had been kidnapped. Shigaraki is very pleased with everything that is happening, and he also suggested that Bakugo join the League of Villains. But Bakugo, even at the cost of his life, would never become a villain, so he refused. Meanwhile, the guys arrived at the place and put on disguises. Walking down the street, they saw a press conference at UE School, where the headmaster and some teachers apologized to all the affected students. Then the journalists bombarded them with tricky questions, and ordinary residents began to condemn the actions of the school and teachers. Shigaraki, having seen this press conference, was glad that society is not happy with the heroes, as they do not cope with their duties, and people do not want to forgive the mistakes made by the heroes. The villains call the heroes two-faced people who live for money and fame. And people for what? But they always criticize instead of support. Then Shigaraki began to put pressure on Bakuji's passion for victories, and then completely asks to release him. However, Bakugo takes off and attacks Shigaraki. Bakugo said his goal is to become a famous hero like All Might. Meanwhile, Shukachi and the heroes had already discussed the plan. It turned out that the director and teachers used the press conference to divert the attention of the villains, so the attack of the heroes will be as unexpected as possible. All Might and several other heroes break into Shigaraki's bar and attack the villains. Shigaraki is shocked by what is happening, and therefore asks Kurogiri to move all the Nomu to the bar. However, the impaler covers Kurogiri's mouth. Meanwhile, the guys got to the hangar, where they found a lot of Nomu. However, another part of the heroes broke into the hangar and captured all the Nomu. At the Gran Torino bar, he asks where their all-for-one boss is. Suddenly, many portals appear from which the Nomu begins to emerge. Bakugo and the villains are sucked into these portals, and the heroes have once again missed the League of Villains. It turned out that after the heroes took over the barn, the all-for-one boss appeared, which easily attacked the heroes. Prospector and All Might begin to fight Nomu. The Almighty decides to go to the hangar to help the heroes. Meanwhile, All for One destroys Best Jeans, as his quirk doesn't suit him due to the difficulty in controlling it. And Deku and the guys are shocked with fear and can't even move. Shigaraki and other villains emerge from the teleporters along with Bakugo. All for One tells him not to be upset about the defeat, because for this he saved all his villains, as well as Bakugo. At that moment, All Might appears and attacks the boss. But All for One uses 4 quirk at the same time and counterattacks All Might. The boss takes control of Kurogiri and opens a portal for the villains to enter the portal and also take Bakugo with them. All Might attacks the boss again and at the same time tries to save Bakugo, but the boss doesn't let him do it. Deku tries to figure out how to save Bakugo. He figured out how to do it, but without engaging in battle. Deku and Ida then push off the wall so they can fly up thanks to the ice springboard. They successfully take off, and Bakugo flies up to the guys and grabs Kirishima's hand, thus saving Bakugo. Meanwhile, the boss takes over Magn's body and drags all the villains into the portal. All Might gathers his spirit and slams the boss into the ground. After that, All Might partially loses his heroic form. All Might has flashbacks from his youth where he tells his teacher Nana Shimura that he wants to become a symbol of peace. All for One starts insulting All Might's teacher. Then All Might hits the boss with all his might, but flies off in response to the boss's blow for a couple of 100 meters, where Gran Torino picks him up in flight. It turns out their fight is broadcast around the world. All for One attacks All Might and he loses his hero form. Now the whole world sees the true form of the Almighty. The boss reveals that Shigaraki is the grandson of Nana Shimura. Then the helper concentrates his power in his right hand, saying that he will not lose. Other heroes also appear and take the wounded. All for One attacks All Might and destroys everything around. After the boss collects a whole combination of quirks and is going to destroy the All Might, they exchange powerful attacks. The hero remembered Gran Torino's instructions, so he concentrated his power on his left hand. But it was a trap, and after that he again concentrated power in his right hand and attacked the boss with a powerful blow. All Might raised his hand and turned back into his hero form. In the end, All for One was placed in an iron cell and sent to prison, and All Might pointed a finger at the camera of journalists and said that he was next. But this gesture was for Deku, since the peace symbol resigned. After everything that happened, the guys took Bakugo to the police and All Might to the hospital. All Might decides to visit Chukachi and Gran Torino, who are discussing the roots of the Shigaraki family. Then All Might decides to go in search of Shigaraki, but he is stopped by Gran Torino, saying that he and Chukachi will deal with it, and All Might should go to the Yui school. Meanwhile, Todoroki has returned home and finds his angry father, who is now the #1 hero. However, he is unhappy that he took this place in this way. Deku received a message from All Might, and they met on the beach. At the meeting, All Might hit Deku in the face because he disobeyed and therefore could go to another world. All Might revealed that his heroic time was up, and he can no longer maintain his heroic form, and he praised the deck for being able to save Bakugo without loss or injury. Since All Might has time, he will train the successor. Meanwhile, the principal decided it was time to launch his plan to protect the students. To do this, teachers need to talk with the parents of the students so that they give permission for the enhanced training of the heroes. In the end, all the students left their homes and went to Yui School's dormitory. Before moving into the Yui dormitory, Aizawa explained the rules and also showed them the new house. The task of the students is to arrange themselves in the rooms. After the settlement, they announced an imminent exam for obtaining a temporary heroic license, which is held twice a year. In this regard, teachers will ensure that students prepare and pass everything at least 2 super moves. The students put on their costumes and go to the gym, where Aizawa explains why super moves are so important, as well as what qualities the heroes are judged for. For the next 10 days, all students will train quirks twice as hard and learn super moves at the same time, and all hero costumes will be improved. All Might also came to observe Deku's progress and give out his tips on how to create super moves. All Might instructed Deku to come up with his own unique move, causing him to go into deep thought. He went to the engineering department, where they are improving suits. Ida and Uraraka also went there. When they met Deku, there was an explosion. This one was Hatsume, and thanks to Deku, he came up with a super move that uses the strength of his legs. 4 days later, his costume received stabilizers on his arms and legs, and all the students developed their super moves. The day of the exam has arrived. The goal of all students is to pass this exam and become semi-professional heroes with a temporary license. 1540 students arrived for the exam. So the goal of the first stage is to reduce the number of participants to whoever hit the third target last gets a point. The student who gets 2 points goes further. The first stage begins, and therefore a huge zone appears. Deku suggested that his classmates come together and act as a group, but Bakugo and Todoroki decide to perform solo. However, after the Yui festival was held, the quirks of all the students of the Yui school became known to other schools. When the start is announced, everyone starts attacking Yui school. However, the students use their quirks and fight off the balls. Then she pins him to the ground. Deku pushes her back with force. But at that moment, a student of the Ketsubu and the guys came up with a plan where Deku decided to become a bait so that Sero and Uraraka would tie up the opponents. As a result, they successfully passed to the next stage. Meanwhile, Todoroki encounters 10 colorful ninjas that he freezes. How is his clanmates? Then the ninja throw water and heavy objects at him, and Todoroki drove them into a trap and undermines the tank, thereby defeating the opponents. Todoroki advanced to the next stage. Meanwhile, Seiko has an IQ quirk that is activated by T and turns her into an evil genius. She, along with her team from CI Academy, spotted the Yui group. In turn, they also notice opponents in the building. However, Seiko plays loud music, stopping Jiro. In response, Jiro decides to attack with a sound, but her house is broken with a shot from the roof. The temperature in the room drops sharply, causing Azui to fall asleep. Seiku's goal is to make Yaoyorozu use her quirk to heat up and become weak. Yaoyorozu guessed that the enemy was waiting for this, but remembered Deku's words, so she creates 4 pairs of headphones, and then a giant speaker to attack Jiro with a low-frequency sound. Her plan worked, but Seiko grabbed Yaoyorozu at the last moment and locked herself in the room with her. However, the guys stopped Seiko, so they went to the next stage. Meanwhile, Bakugo, Kirishima, and Kaminari are attacked by a sophomore from Shiketsu's high school, Seiji Shishikura, who has a meat monster quirk. He immediately turns Kirishima into his flesh, and then the sophomore creates his meat monsters, but Bakugo destroys them with his explosions. Seiji then feeds his flesh under the bridge and turns Bakugo into a pile of flesh. But Bakugo manages to throw a Kaminari grenade, which blows up Bakugo and then fries Seiji with lightning, which weakens his control over the monsters. After regaining consciousness, Kirishima knocks out the villain, and then they switch to the already restored students. As a result, all 3 pass the next stage. According to the preliminary results, 11 U students have already passed to the next stage, and also no one from the U school has yet been dropped out. Meanwhile on the field, Ida and Aoyama decided to team up and help each other. However, Aoyama decides at the last moment to sacrifice himself in order for Ida to fulfill his dream and become a hero. He begins to draw attention with a laser, but suddenly a flock of pigeons appears, controlled by Kuji. Tokoyami also appears with his shadow, as well as Minoru, who sticks everyone with his balls, and Invisible Toru blinds everyone and starts attacking the target with balls, thanks to which they jointly passed the exam. All 100 participants have been selected, as well as all 20 students from UEI have passed to the next stage. The second stage begins, so the building on the battlefield begins to collapse, and now the goal of the students is to save the injured people, which are specially trained actors. In the second stage, each participant has 100 points. For the mistakes made, points are taken away from the participant, and points are added for each saved person. If the participant's points fall below 50, then he is eliminated. Each participant will be assigned an employee who monitors his actions. The start of the second stage was announced, and Deku, along with the guys, found a crying child. However, the boy said that everyone had minus points, since first they had to ask about the state of health. Then Deku took the boy and carried him to the collection point for the wounded, while everyone else went in search of other victims. Other groups are also gathering the wounded and preparing grounds for them. Suddenly, disguised bandits appeared with their leader, the hero killer whale. Now all students have 2 goals: to save the victims and also to protect them from the villains. The bandits began their attack, and the future heroes were faced with a choice: rescue or attack. While the Deku was thinking about what to do, Shindo decides to detain the criminals with his vibration waves, and he asks everyone else to take the victims away. However, Killer Whale approaches and knocks out Shindo. Therefore, Todoroki intervenes, who attacks Killer Whale with ice. Inasa Yorashi also came to his aid. He easily blew off the criminals, but Todoroki decides to attack with fire, and Yorashi attacks with a stream of air. because of which they interfere with each other with their quirks and start arguing. However, they are interrupted by the bandits' cement mixture. They start attacking at the same time, which causes the flames to blow towards Shindo, but Deku manages to save him. Killer Whale then attacks Yorashi with a sound wave and also grabs Todoroki. Meanwhile, Shindo comes to his senses and stops the pursuing criminals and asks Deku to destroy them. Todoroki and Yorashi realize that they had made a mistake, so Todoroki directs fire into Yorashi's airflow, because of which they jointly created a fire whirlwind and surrounded Killer Whale with it. At this time, Deku and other heroes begin to destroy the villains. However, Killer Whale puts out the fire whirlwind, but Deku appears and knocks out the hero. The end of the exam is announced, as the victims are saved. The judges calculated the points of the students, where as a result almost everyone passed except for Bakugo, Yorashi, and Todoroki. Everyone was given leaflets to familiarize themselves with the points on which they were awarded or deducted points. As a result, the heroes who passed the exam received a temporary license of heroes, and those who did not pass the exam have one more chance to get it. To do this, you need to take special courses and pass an individual test. If the results are good, they will also receive a temporary hero license. It turned out that underneath Kami's appearance was Himiko Toga, her metamorphosis quirk. When she absorbs human blood, she can turn into him, and when she scratched his face in a battle with Deku, she received his blood. Meanwhile, the Almighty visited the Tartar prison, where All for One is being held. All Might came to find out Shikareki's location. However, All for One has no idea where he is, as he sent him free swimming. Also, All for One reported that after the resignation of the All Might, people no longer trust the heroes, and therefore the All Might can only watch how the heroic world falls apart due to his powerlessness. However, All Might understands that One for All wants to destroy All Might and his successor Deku with the help of Shigaraki, but All Might does not intend to give up and promises to crush the villains. On the way home, All Might receives a photo of his provisional license from Deku, so he is overjoyed for his successor. At the dorm that evening, Bakugo asks Deku to talk to him. They enter area where Bakugo lost to Deku for the first time. Bakugo can't figure out how a weakling with no quirk got into Yui, and then got a quirk, and was even able to get a hero's license. After the battle in Kamina, Bakugo figured out that Deku got his power from All Might, as he saw All for One take and use multiple quirks at the same time. He understood his whole path from beginning to end, but he could not understand why the Almighty chose him as his successor. To answer this question for himself, he invites Deku to fight. Bakugo starts to attack Deku, but he dodges as he doesn't want to fight. Bakugo always looked up to All Might, but now that he transferred his power to Deku, he drained his energy himself, and therefore there is no longer a symbol of the world that Bakugo used to look up to. And now Bakugo does not know what to do next. Deku understands his feelings, but the next time he attacks, he punches him in the face. Deku decided not to hold back and fight at full strength. However, Bakugo attacks so fast that Deku doesn't even have time to react. Deku gets up, but Bakugo blinds him and attacks again. It was also revealed that Deku always admired Bakugo, and he inspired Deku even more than All Might did. Deku starts a counterattack, but Bakugo slams him into the ground. It turned out that a sentinel robot was watching the whole battle, which informed Izawa about this. Izawa went outside and met All Might. All Might appeared in Zone B, where he asked the guys to calm down, and he also heard their entire conversation. All Might then explained to Bakugo why he chose Deku. Bakugo calls himself a weakling as he regrets that the world will never see All Might again, believing that if he were stronger, he would save him. But the Almighty replied that his time was on the way, and therefore no one's fault. In the end, All Might told him the whole story from beginning to end, and Bakugo promised to keep the secret about strength a secret. Bakugo and Deku are now rivals. Izawa also punished the students for breaking the rules. He gave Bakugo 4 days of house arrest and 3 days for Deku to clean up. Since the departure of the Almighty, the news of the resignation of the symbol of peace continued to be discussed on TV and to cause confusion in the minds of people. But the second shocking news was that now the prospector will be the new symbol of hope. In parallel with this, many groups of villains have become more active, and every day there are more and more of them. The League of Villains, led by Shigaraki, grew at an unprecedented pace. However, they became very selective in their choice of villains, and therefore the strike force selected crazy and strong villains. Meanwhile, Principal Nezu held a meeting of the whole school. He spoke about the difficult current situation, which may worsen in the future. Therefore, part-time work by heroes will be introduced according to the type of heroic practice. Now, the main goal of the UE school is to raise worthy heroes in this difficult time. The performance ended with Vlad, who asked to follow the rules of the school, otherwise there will be deductions. In the class, Aizawa gave a lecture and told in more detail about the part-time job. Since this work is outside the jurisdiction of the academy, each student will be responsible for